Good evening, everyone. Can I just say how exciting it is to see you all here tonight and to welcome you to our celebration of 30 years of delivering primary care and support across our region. There are so many familiar faces. It's been an absolute treat to catch up with old and new friends and colleagues, which I hope we can continue after this session. My name is Narelle Mills. I'm currently the Acting CEO with Murrumbidgee Primary Health Network, and I'll be your MC for this evening. Just a little bit of housekeeping before we go on. The toilets are over to your right, and in the case of an emergency, I think we go out that way. So just follow someone who looks like they know where they're going. So before we continue with our proceedings, I would like to acknowledge Wiradjuri Elder, Auntie Isabel Reid, and Wiradjuri and Ngunnawal Elder, Auntie Mary Atkinson, who are here with us tonight. Both Auntie Isabel and Auntie Mary are leaders in our community, much respected leaders in our community, and have been pivotal to the work of the Murrumbidgee Primary Health Network, and I really thank you for being here tonight with us. I would now like to ask and invite Auntie Mary to welcome us to country. Auntie Mary is a proud Wiradjuri Ngunnawal woman who has lived in Wagga for more than 40 years. Auntie Mary has a keen interest in primary health care and mental health, and working with children and youth to guide them in learning culture through art, music and dance. And she was the recipient of the Wagga Wagga NAIDOC Community Person of the Year in 2015. Welcome, Auntie Mary.
Hi everyone, thank you for inviting me to the special 30 years of celebrating PHN. Before I'd like to acknowledge our senior matriarch in the building, Auntie Isabel Reid. I always get nervous when I'm doing a welcome in front of our seniors, you know, because you got to get it right. So she's sitting in there, do this, do that. And I said, okay, Aunt. So, but you know, it's so great to acknowledge achievements that we do in our communities. I said 30 years, wow, like I remember when I was born, that my mum, in the year that I was born, and women before her, weren't allowed to be in a ward, on a maternity ward. We had to be on the veranda. So times are changing for us as people. I was just saying earlier too to Auntie Isn't that it's moving forward and it's changing for us as people. And that comes by doing lots of collaboration and listening to each other. I've always say, nothing for us and about us without us. So I acknowledge the great work that you guys do in listening to us and bringing us to the table and listen to us generally. I also acknowledge other special guests in the room this evening. I'm acknowledging pay my respects to what they have done over the years as well. I acknowledge I am also a member of the MLHD board, so I acknowledge other board members here. I've seen a few around here this evening, so I acknowledge my colleagues there, and we are all there for the one reason and doing what is right for our communities, you know, onward and upward to provide better services for our communities. So I am a proud Wiradjuri Ngunnawal elder. And you know, I've got 14 grandchildren, 2 great-grandchildren, and I always love telling everybody that I brag. I've got 2 sets of twin boys, so they're the joy of my life. You know what it's like when you become a mother and you think there's that love, but when you have grandchildren, that is a special love all over again. So, you know, I hope the world is looking for a better place for them. So I'm a proud Wiradjuri Ngunnawal elder. I have been given my permission by my elders to perform my welcome to country, and she's sitting right over there. She said, your turn, my girl, to stand up, because there is a process around that, you know. There's a process where we have our procedures and our guidelines and our obligations that our elders keep carrying us forward and our respect that we have. So I'll get my glasses out and I'll get to the start of the welcome. It is very important that we welcome onto traditional countries. Every time a formal welcome to country is given, it continues a tradition that has always been a part of Aboriginal culture. It was always given by the way of welcome when permission was granted to visit different tribal areas. All of Australia is sacred country. We need to find out about the very, very first Australians that have walked upon this country for thousands of years. When we talk about traditional country, we mean something beyond the dictionary definition of the word. For Aboriginal Australians, we might mean our homeland or tribal or clan area, and we mean more than just a place on the map. For us, country is a word for all the values, places, resources, stories and cultural obligations associated with the area and its features. It describes the entirety of our ancestral domains. It is on this land that my ancestors, the Wiradjuri people, cared, lived, learned and raised their families, and we continue to do that today. I acknowledge and pay my respects to my elders, both past, present and of the future. I extend that respect to any other Aboriginal people who are present today. I also extend that respect and acknowledge our non-Aboriginal brothers and sisters that are walking on this journey with us throughout every day and are coming together in the true form of reconciliation. I invite you here in this place tonight to celebrate 30 years of PHN, of all the great work that they're doing and what they remain open to do in the near future. And you know, it always was and always will be Aboriginal land. Mandangu, thank you very much, and we'll have a great evening. Thank you. I don't want PH&N to be taking me to the hospital. Well, I know they'll look after me. Thank you.
Thanks, Auntie Mary, for that warm welcome to country. I'd also like to take this opportunity to acknowledge the traditional custodians and elders past, present and future from the various lands on which MPHN operates. We recognise our communities are made up of many Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples, descended from additional mobs and clans who also call the Murrumbidgee region home. We recognise these lands have always been places of traditional healing and medicine, and this plays a role in shaping future health services. I would also like to acknowledge any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people meeting with us tonight. In November 2023, the PHN was thrilled to launch our Reconciliation Action Plan, and it sets out our vision to establish an ever-learning culture that acknowledges, listens, celebrates and embraces First Nations communities across the Murrumbidgee. During our 30 years of operation, we have sought to address the healthcare gaps experienced by Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, and we remain committed to continuing our partnership with First Nations communities, walking side by side as we learn and seek to improve health outcomes. I feel very humbled to be the Master of Ceremonies for our official proceedings tonight. I actually commenced working for the Wagga Wagga and District Division of General Practice back in 1996, recruited by Peter Keith, who's here with us tonight, and will join us later on our panel. While I stayed only for a short time, just less than 2 years, and then moved to Newcastle, I returned to Wagga in 2008 and commenced a part-time project officer role with what was then called the Riverina Division of General Practice and Primary Care. and that was under the leadership of Nancy Pearcey, who is also here with us tonight and will be joining us on the panel. Since that time, I've had many varied roles within the organisation, and it's an absolute privilege to be here tonight as Acting CEO. During my time with the organisation, I've seen a lot of things change, and yet some things still remain the same. But the organisation, and importantly the people who have worked with us and are still working with us, along with many of our partners, are genuinely passionate about making a difference. And it's that passion and purpose that keeps me turning up every day. So throughout the years as an organisation, we've engaged so many people as either health professionals, employees, directors, stakeholders, commission service providers, politicians and community members. We had a long and extensive guest list for tonight, and I'm so pleased to see so many of you here. We did receive a number of formal apologies, which I won't go through, but they all were providing us well wishes for this evening. And some of these messages you'll be able to read in our record book outside. There are 2 apologies, however, that I'd like to share with you. Our former CEO, Melissa Neal, is unfortunately unable to be here tonight due to illness. Having stepped down as CEO earlier this year to spend more time with her young family, Melissa was really looking forward to celebrating here tonight and disappointed she can't join us. After Nancy Pearcey, Melissa Neal was the organisation's second longest serving CEO. We've also received an apology for our longest standing board director with 25 years of service, and that's Dr. Ken Mackey. Both Ken and Melissa have contributed so much to our organisation and are missed from our celebrations tonight. I would now like to invite our board chair, Dr. Jodie Colbert, to the stage to provide a welcome address.
Hello everyone. It's definitely a different view from up here than down there. It's great to see so many of you here. So thank you, Narelle and Auntie Mary, particularly to you for your warm welcome to country that you've provided to welcome us to Wiradjuri country tonight. And though it's been said from institutionally, I would like to also add my personal acknowledgement of elders past, present and future, and acknowledge Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who are joining us here tonight. Well, what a night so far. It's been wonderful to catch up with so many people, and those of you I haven't had a chance to speak to, I'd love to see how you all fit into the organisation and where you've come from. My time with the organisation is shorter compared to many of you, so I'm really interested to see where everyone fits in. And then, thankfully there will be some time afterwards as well where we can continue some of those conversations that I know that you've been having. The area was buzzing out there earlier and it was great to see. On a Friday night, I suspect many of you may have had some other plans originally, either partying, some of you perhaps, I don't know, or sitting on your lounge, watching the football or other things. So I'm really pleased to see you here tonight, and it's a testament to the organisation and the invitations that went out, but also your commitment to coming and celebrating this milestone with colleagues and friends. So it is such an honour and a privilege to be able to give the welcome address tonight on behalf of the Primary Health Network and Board of Directors as we celebrate 30 years of providing primary health support and services to the providers and to the people of the Murrumbidgee. I was reflecting on this milestone originally when we were talking about it and wondered about traditional wedding anniversary gifts. My mind went to, how do you mark these milestones? And I went to those lists that you find in magazines and the like of things for wedding anniversaries. 30 years is Pearl, for those who don't know. But before you get excited, we're not doing an Oprah. You're not all getting a Pearl. Don't look under your seats. It will just be that souvenir booklet that you've got. That would be your take-home memoir tonight. But back to the pearl analogy, pearls are rare. Only 1 in several million shellfish yield a pearl. They're made by both marine oysters and freshwater mussels as a natural defence against an irritant, such as a parasite entering their shell or damage to their fragile body. And in fact, the pearl's the only gem made by a living creature. Pearls take several years to be created too, and harvesting natural pearls comes with great risk to the diver, who would manually pull pearls from the ocean floor and river bottoms to check them all individually for a pearl. But once harvested, they require no special polishing or cutting, and obviously the commercial cultivation of them speeds up the process, but they still do take time to grow. It's not something you can rush. It did make me think about how this is relevant to our 30 years of operation. I'd like to think that over the years our organisation has taken on some of these pearl properties. It's certainly taken several years and many iterations of the business to get where we are today. And there have been many who have taken great risks over the years, none more so than the longest standing CEO, Nancy Pearcey, and we acknowledge Nancy here tonight. For those who were privileged to be involved with the organisation during Nancy's tenure, you will notice how much grit and determination she had to keep our organisation alive before we became a primary health network. In fact, organisation legend has it that Nancy is credited with ensuring MPHN became the nation's 31st PHN, even though there were only going to be 30 originally. Now, I'm not going to go back to my analogy about irritants and things, but Nancy put all that determination into making sure that this region was well represented. And it's been marvellous to do that because we're one of the few that has a one-to-one relationship with our MLHD and our MLHD colleagues that we work in partnership with every day. And I think that's, that relationship and that particular size and orientation of our region has been very important. So since our humble beginnings in the mid-90s, supporting the general practices in Wagga Wagga and surrounds, with a handful of staff, we have grown to now support various primary healthcare providers and community across a much larger geographic area with around 70 employees, many of whom are here tonight, and I've had the pleasure of meeting some of our newer employees that have only started in the last 3 or 4 months tonight. And their enthusiasm is amazing, as it is for our staff who've been doing this for much longer and had to show much more grit and determination over many years to stay focused on the task at hand. But as Narelle mentioned, it's that passion that drives our staff, and one of the things that our board really enjoys, because we see how that those passionate people turning the funding that we get into real services for our community and guiding those. During our time as a Murrumbidgee Medicare local, we were different again. That one of those iterations, delivering primary healthcare services and a staff in excess of 130. Over the years, we have seen a great number of people work for or be part of the leadership of the organisation. And I would just like to acknowledge those people who are no longer with us today. Regardless of the remit determined by the government of the day, and we know that can often change, sometimes rapidly, there has been one constant. And that constant is an organisation which has been dedicated to improving the health and well-being of our communities and the primary healthcare workforce who are caring for our residents. You only need to take a close look at our history and in the timeline display to see some of the achievements over the past 30 years. And if you haven't had a chance to have a look at that tonight, which is out there, I'd encourage you to do so. It's really quite incredible to see from the very start the amazing projects and programs that have been delivered or supported by this organisation, and that's really only a small part of them up there. And even then it takes some time to review them. The development of this timeline that I'm referring to was a result of much trawling through our archives of annual reports, newspaper clippings, photos and media releases. We even interviewed a number of past employees and board members, and you'll hear some of those interviews shortly as part of our panel discussion. And while the archives uncovered various workplace stories and legends, they also revealed that many of those early day challenges remain today. The final report for the first year of operations states the health workforce in the region as a major problem. Still something that we're faced with today, but 30 years on, we're still grappling with this issue. But just as we did in the 90s, we take a deep sigh and then we front up and try and work out some innovative solutions to address health workforce shortages. And that part of the DNA of this organisation hasn't changed, that willingness to not give up in the face of challenge, but to dig in and to look for ways that we can do better and provide better for our region. In that same report, we also find the first organisation work plan. And I did see this bandied around earlier when they were going through the archives originally. On it is listed a goal to connect 95% of general practices to our fax machine. I suspect too that there might be still who have their fax machines today, but we are working really hard on that to axe the fax, and we're getting there. A few projects were on the work plan, including one for diabetes, the development of Health Services Directory, and a best project practice with St Vincent's Hospital. And it's really interesting to learn that a localised health service directory was just as important all those years ago as it is today, and that we're still looking for ways to manage and reduce diabetes, and still working with St Vincent's Hospital on this, continuing to find a role for that, and also roles in asthma education. So there's some aspects of our health that we continue to work on, and some partnerships that have remained in the long term. Now, while many of the projects and challenges from those early days are similar today, the strong foundations and partnerships, as I've said, created through those 30 years positions us well to innovate, inspire and transform the local health system. And we keep working on those things today. It's the transformational and visionary goal that inspires me as both the board chair and also as a general practitioner. It's very easy to get bogged down in the day-to-day challenges and the day-to-day disappointments in the health system or the things that we struggle with. But for me, and I'm sure my colleagues and fellow board directors, being able to do what I do in general practice and as a health leader wouldn't be possible without the support of those around us. In particular, I'd like to acknowledge my practice staff, who often rearrange appointments at short notice to help me to fulfil the roles that I have in my role as chair, and to my patients who are ever so patient with those changes. And also to my thanks to the MPHN team who diligently prepare reports, inform us as directors to understand the issues, the challenges and the risks to enable us to make well-informed decisions to guide the organisation strategically. And finally, celebrating this milestone would not be possible without all our current and past stakeholders, communities and employees who have helped make our organisation in its various iterations what it is today. And as many have said, it's so great to see so many faces here, many of whom I don't know, that you've been present and involved in the organisation long ago, and it's really great that you've been able to come here tonight, and some of you from significant distance. On behalf of the board and all the stakeholders of the organisation, I would also like to say that we all know the great pride and care that all of our past, present employees take in the work they do for the Murrumbidgee Primary Health Network. So please accept our sincere thanks for all that you do to improve the health outcomes for our communities and to diligently support the primary health workforce across our region. I know in my role as a GP how much I value the support we receive at the practice and how invaluable it is to us, and that's something that's repeated to me many times as I travel in the area from other primary health providers. So thank you to all those staff. The behind the scenes people are not always seen, but they perform a huge role, as do those who are at front of house, and we couldn't do it without you. It's an honour and a privilege to lead the Murrumbidgee Primary Health Network. The strong legacy that has been left over the years by those who have come before me in my role as chair and as director, and by staff in the past leading into now. And I'm excited to continue growing the organisation's story as we move into the next 30 years and beyond. Thank you all.
Thank you, Jodie. Now, as Jodie mentioned in her address, we'd now like to take the opportunity to reminisce with us over the past 30 years. To create this session, we interviewed several past and present employees, board directors and stakeholders. Their stories and recollections have formed the basis of what we will discuss as a panel. and snippets from these interviews will be shared throughout the panel discussion. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome to the stage Peter Keith, who is one of our founding GPs for the Wagga Wagga and District Division of General Practice, and then was later a board director. Nancy, if you'd like to join us on the stage. Nancy served for 18 years as the organisation's CEO and led the organisation across all of its iterations. Our current board chair, Dr. Jodie Colbert, and I'll also join the panel with Melissa Neal not being here tonight. To facilitate the panel discussion, please welcome Anita McRae to the stage. Anita commenced working with the Murrumbidgee Medicare Local in 2017 as team leader in the Partners in Recovery program and is now MPHN's Senior Manager, Priority Populations. Welcome, Anita.
Thank you. Thank you, Narelle. Yep, good to go. Thank you. Thanks, Narelle, and a warm welcome, Peter, Nancy, Jodie and Narelle to our panel discussion. So I guess we need to start at the beginning, when in late 1993 our organisation came into existence.
Well, back in the early days, the very earliest days, it was the beginning of divisions when I was the first chairman, and Peter Keith was our first CEO, and it was the result of developments that come about through GP representation. That meant like the AMA, ACGP and RDAA were agitating in the Department of Health, and they listened to us to some extent, and there was maybe somehow a push from the politicians as well to get a little bit more and general practitioners connected in with the all the health systems. There was a perception that it wasn't doing so well. They were spot on.
I guess in those early days of divisions of general practice, general practice were very much sort of cottage industry. Divisions of general practice were very focused on supporting general practices. And when I first started in that role, one of my first jobs in the morning was to dial up the modem. It was I think a 56K modem, and download the emails for the day. So admin would get quite cross if I spent too long doing that, because it would tie up a phone line.
Oh dear. Peter, let's start with you. In your coordinator report from 1996, you talk about one of the biggest challenges as getting more GPs to see the division as relevant and worthy of support. As a founding member, what are your recollections from those early days in establishing the Wagga Wagga and District Division of General Practice?
Well, back in 1993, I was one of about 30 GPs in Wagga at that stage. I have to report that only about 6 of those 30 were anyhow interested in progressing a division, which is probably a reflection of the reality of general practice over the years. That it's not everyone who sees value, but those of us who saw value in it were really enthusiastic about it. When the opportunity came for local areas of GPs who wanted to progress in that area to actually put that into operation, Paul Murrah actually helped me write the application to form the division. So out of that 6, I had support, and Paul Murrah, and I think was one of those 6, very helpful. I could never have done it. I had little expertise in the area. I learned all that I learned from Professor Mark Harris and others who came down to teach us how to get a division up and functional.
Wonderful. I think you've undersold yourself there, but thank you. Narelle, you were also part of those early days. We found one of your original reports when you were the Project Development Officer. In it, you talk about frustrations and challenges, but you also acknowledge you relished the opportunity to meet and work with GPs in the area. Why was that so important to you?
I think back then, as it is now, it's really important to be out in the community, understanding what the needs are, talking with community, talking with practitioners. They know what the issues are, and then often they'll know what the solutions are. So there's no point in us as administrative, mostly administrative, sitting in an office coming up with great ideas and then trying to roll them out and most likely fail. So I really enjoyed the times to be able to go out and visit with GPs. When I first started here, I'd moved from Fairfield Division of General Practice in Sydney. So I'd spent quite a bit of time on the road to and from work every day, so it was really nice to move out to the country and get out on the road and travel out to some of our beautiful communities. So really enjoyed that. I had two practice visits that I constantly recall. Both of them were in Cootamundra. It wasn't your practice, Jacques, so wherever you are. But I remember one of the visits there, the GP and the practice manager offered me a sao with, is it Pex paste or just like fish paste on it, and I thought, well, this is what they must eat in the country. So so that was interesting. And then, I'm not sure if it was the same visit, but then I was chatting with the GP doing a needs assessment at the time. And the GP was not pleased with me being there, taking up their valuable time. But I learned a lesson that day around listening and respect. So, so learned a lot along the way.
Very good. We often talk about the organisation in its various iterations, divisions, Medicare locals, and today, primary health networks. So let's hear a little bit about all these changes.
We changed our name from, when I first started, we were Wagga Wagga and District Division of General Practice. So we changed it to Riverina Division of General Practice. So we decided to add primary health to it so that we weren't just Division of General Practice, because we were really in the field of primary health. So we added the Riverina Division of General Practice and Primary Health Limited. We were threatened with being sued because the Primary Health Limited Australia didn't want that name used. And in retrospect, that was the first breakthrough. We made the breakthrough for the government to be able to use the word primary health networks.
There is one thing, just in terms of an overview of the whole process, going from divisions of general practice to Medicare locals to primary health networks. For what it's worth, it seemed like a game of musical chairs to me. So we started with 120 or so divisions of general practice, and then it was reduced to 60 Medicare locals. And then the government, in its wisdom, after about 4 or 5 years, decided to make 30 primary health networks. So if you didn't get your chair in there, you're out of the game. I think maybe the major achievement was actually having the MPHN in its current form here in Murrumbidgee. When we were moving from the Medicare local to the primary health networks, Wagga was lumped, or our Riverina was lumped in with the Western District. So in fact, anywhere west of the Great Divide in New South Wales would have been one big, massive primary health service. And so we weren't one of the 30 nominated PHNs. So Nancy Pearcey, the CEO, and I lobbied pretty hard to get us made, and we got made the 31st PHN. So we were able to maintain our current footprint instead of just being everywhere over Western New South Wales.
Since we became a PHN in 2015-16, and now, as a Commissioner of Services, our funding has nearly doubled. So with that comes obviously a lot more activity and to what Anita said, certainly additional staff that we've had to grow as an organisation since then.
Really, hard time because we have been working and then doing number of projects, and suddenly we were told that it's going to finish, and then so that time so we were very grateful to join PHN from the first day itself, and then we worked with the organisation for until now.
It was interesting times, and as I said, but fortunately Vimal and myself were able to come across to Murrumbidgee and continue those relationships that we already had with some of those practices along the border regions.
We're just going to start with Peter again. Peter, you worked for the division for 4 years, then you moved into a board director role for 10 years, while also being a local GP. What are your reflections on the various challenges of the organisation, and how did it maintain its integrity in supporting primary care and the health of communities?
The care, the core purpose of the division was the working with the GPs, and I think in those days we just had to make sure that every GP and every practice, to the best of its ability, was trying to cooperate with the division as much as possible. In the early days, I had one of my colleagues, I'm happy to say this publicly, who was strongly opposed to the division, and that obtained for about 2 years. And then one day I came in on a Monday morning, he said, "Pete, sit down, I've got something to tell you. I've joined the division." Oh, I could have fallen over backwards, but it just showed that even areas of resistance can be melted down and changed with time. And I don't know what happened on the weekend, but obviously something positive happened to change his attitude. And I think that experience has probably been multiplied over the years. I only have one other story to tell you that I think is very illustrative of the reality in general practice. One of the early tasks of the division was to get involved with the whole process of the government introducing accreditation into general practice. I remember those days well. Because of my core role in the division, or one of the divisions, I was asked to sit on a committee, an exploratory committee, an investigative committee for accreditation, and we actually visited every state in Australia. So I talked to a lot of GPs. I was staggered at how conservative my GP colleagues were. Is that any surprise to anyone? I was shocked. I was quite horrified that there was an unwillingness to think outside the square in many of my colleagues. Those in the division had gotten used to thinking outside the square and thinking laterally and being progressive in their thinking without being radical. But some of our colleagues struggled then with that, and I suspect quite a few still have the same problem today.
Thank you very much. Nancy, as we heard in your introduction, you were CEO through all of these changes. No doubt there were challenges along the way. Can you share with us, please, how you ensured MPHN became the 31st primary health network?
To what's already been said, I can't help but get off the topic. First of all, in the early stages, I remember Dr. Keith coming into my office when I was CEO of Wagga Base Hospital and asking for help. Please help us support an application for funding for an asthma educator for the the Wagga Wagga and District Division of General Practice. And I thought, oh, well, okay. It was only worth $17,000 or something. It was only a small amount. And then he said, we haven't got an office, so they ended up over in the Harvey House, where the university is now, and then they didn't have a car. So I said, oh, well, we'll lend you one of ours. The good part about that was, many years later, I became CEO of the division, and we still had the car. And in fact, we had two, and they didn't wake up for about 5 years, I think, before they woke up. That we had, and then someone decided they better take it back. It was their asset, not ours. But, and the same goes for, you know, I considered Peter's reign before me was very conservative, and I think he thought he was going outside the square. Well, I think the board thought, God, what have we got here when I came? Because I wanted to go right outside the square. But yes, I think it's just the build and the staff that I see here tonight that were there then, some of them, and all the new ones that came along that really had that passion for it. And how could I stand back and not fight for our area, our primary health network? And it was tough. We tried every avenue. I went to council and talked to the mayor and got him to write a letter. We went to the New South Wales politician. We had Kay Hull on side. I really, really believe I convinced Peter Dutton's advisor, yes, we'll approve the changing the boundaries. But he said, well, I'll ring you back. Well, he rang back and said, Peter Dutton said no. So as luck happened, the story goes that Peter Dutton moved to, where'd he go to? Yeah, Susan Lee came in after Peter Dutton as Minister for Health. So Susan, I thought, well, we go again. And I was lucky enough to be able to convince her advisor with emails backwards and forwards, and the only thing I was allowed to put on it was 10 minutes with the minister. I wasn't to say what it was about, because at this stage they had decided, they had consultants that decided that our area would be one of the largest, half of New South Wales, and would include Orange, Dubbo, Bathurst, Broken Hill, wherever in it, and Albury. And there was just no sense in it to me. So it was just perseverance, and this poor guy in Albury, with a new minister that he was trying to look after, just kept going. And he said, in the end, I said, I'll go anywhere to meet her. I just need to talk to the minister. And he said, will you go to Melbourne? I said, I don't care, I'll get there somehow. But he rang back and said, no, she won't see you in Melbourne, but if you're in Canberra at 9 o'clock on Monday morning, you'll get 20 minutes. And that's what happened. Actually, it was supposed to be 10 minutes, I should say. I did get 20 minutes. And it was just so simple to actually get someone to understand that, they tried to say our referral patterns were considered. Well, how do we ever refer a patient from Wagga to Dubbo, Orange, Bathurst, Broken Hill? They might come even the other way, but we definitely didn't refer patients. Also, the boundary in line with the Murrumbidgee Local Health District. That was important, and is today, I think, how the whole system of health works, is that it needed to be that boundary. And I think I had 2 more points, and that's all I had to push. I left there not knowing whether she was going to change her mind or change the decision that others had made before her. And we didn't know until the announcement was made. And I was in the hairdressers, I had a wet hair, and the phone rang and I knew it was the Department of Health. So I had to go out on the footpath and answer it. And I came back in and telling her, hurry up. And she said, is something wrong? And I said, no, it's all right. Anyhow, I got home and my daughter had arrived for the weekend. She met me at the front door and I burst into tears. And she said, what's wrong, Mum, what's wrong? I said, they're happy tears. I can't say boo, but we're going to be a separate primary health network. So to me, it was a long-winded story, but it was worth telling because to me it was one of the greatest achievements that we could have made, and it just did happen in the end.
Thank you, Nancy. We've touched on travel tales. I think Narelle's mentioned something about travelling through the vast geographic land that we cover. So we do have such a large area to cover. So travel across the region is inevitable and it's great fun too. In fact, travel often creates some office legends. So let's take a look at some of the travel tales.
But I did do a couple of trips out to Mildura, and there was one particular occasion where on the way back there was some black smoke that started to emerge from the back of the instrument panel. Now, I was actually in the co-pilot seat. I think I was the only person on the flight that actually liked or enjoyed flying on small aircraft. So I had my headphones on, was having a chat to Trev, our pilot. He assured me it was just a circuit or a fuse or something that had shorted and shut down the instrument panel. We kept chatting over with our headphones on. It wasn't actually until we landed that I realised that I guess that smoke had travelled into the back of the aircraft and there was some distressed passengers that were sitting in the back seat. So
I'm so scared. Every time I go, the latest trip was when I went a few months back, I think in Feb, I went with Peter to Geraldry. I hope I'm pronouncing it right. And it's just a stretch of land. And I keep telling him, like, if somebody kills us and buries us, no one will know. And she always goes, Olivia, your mind, you're just overthinking too much. Just drive, enjoy the scene.
I've got some photos of Ken Mackey, Chris Howard, and Jane and one other, Trevor Halliday, all asleep in the plane. I never went to sleep. I loved the plane, but they all went to sleep, so I used to take photos with them. And they all had sometimes really rugged up because it was a very small plane and it got very cold. And she'll tell some stories. It was quite icy, and so.
Jock, I don't know if his family would mind me. I used to travel over from Griffith. I used to travel over with Jock, and people at PHM would know him. Do you remember Jock? Mm-hmm. He was our consumer representative from Griffith, and he used to run the Mitre 10 store. He owned the Mitre 10 store in Griffith and was a well-known businessman. In travelling over with him, I learnt so much about Jock because we'd chat and talk, and he used to train Olympic athletes in swimming, and he had so much he'd done in his life, and he'd talk about his business and he'd talk about governance. So I learnt so much from Jock.
I had a funny experience when the police officer stopped me, and he's asked me to. He's just checking if you drunk and drive. Then he had this machine, and he asked me, say 1 to 7. I say 1 to 7. He said, say 1 7, mate. I said 1 7. No, you say 1 2 3 4 5 6 7. I was so much stressed when he said 1 to 7. I just thought 1 2 and 7. He's just asking me to say 1 to 7.
So I think it was around 7 years ago, probably. There was a carload of us who worked in the commissioning space, and we went over to Canberra for a national meeting with other PHNs around mental health. And we also had Jenny Campbell with us, who was a previous executive of MPHN, and she really did take a liking to iced coffee. Unbeknownst to us, she had left one in the front car, the passenger side door, and it had been in there for a couple of days. She wasn't in the car with us at this point. We were travelling through Canberra. We're at a set of lights, and I was sitting in the front passenger seat, and there was a massive explosion, and the whole inside of the car was just sprayed with congealed iced coffee that smelt like it had been in there for a couple of years. So the driver quickly pulled into a servo, and I was just absolutely covered in iced coffee mess, goop, and the smell of it was just completely rank, and I couldn't even move to undo my seatbelt. So we were just parked in the driveway of this servo, and cars are trying to get around us, and I'm stuck in the car going.
That was hilarious. That took 2 car washes. We had to take it through multiple times, the internal clean, and going down the highway at 100 k's an hour with the windows down. It was disgusting, but funny. Really good trips, memories. Narelle, obviously there are lots of interesting stories there, but we often hear the senior leaders talk about road trips together providing a great opportunity to solve all of the health problems. Can you share with us one challenge that was addressed as a result of a car trip?
I don't think I've got one challenge, but that's exactly right. Whenever we're in a car, it's solving all the big system, or the health system problems of the world, and then some operational problems as well. So our conversations would vary quite a lot. I know that our current provider engagement model that we've developed, I know that was developed by Julie and Mel, I think on a trip from out west at one point, with Melissa doing some whiteboarding on a piece of paper in the front. I'm assuming you were driving, Julie, and not Mel. So our recent strategic plan, I know that Melissa and I were doing a lot of wordsmithing in the car back from Finley last year or the year before, trying to complete a document before a workshop that night. So I think we try to make the most of our time together in those trips. And I think probably the biggest issue is that we never record, we don't always record what we talk about, and maybe we could use AI in the future to help us along that journey.
We all get very nervous when Mel, Julie and Narelle go on road trips because they do a lot of thinking, which equals a lot of work.
I think some of those, the 3 most dangerous words that my practice manager tells me I say, and then I also hear from the senior executive, is I've been thinking.
Nancy, can you tell us about a time that you had to dash to Broken Hill for a very important person?
Sorry. Better put that up so you can hear me. I think to set the scene, Barrier Division of General Practice unfortunately had difficulties, and the Department of Health was going to close them down. So Nancy puts it to the board, and I think there's one board director here tonight that was really worried about us taking over Broken Hill, or Barrier Division of General Practice. So here we were going to run the Riverina plus Barrier. And I thought, well, we've got the expertise to help them improve their provision of services and so forth. So we did have that. Well, that was in 2008. And you can all recall a guy who was Prime Minister in 2013, Kevin Rudd. Well, Kevin did do a real tour around Australia just before the election, and it seems he decided to go to Broken Hill. But I was out playing golf on a Saturday afternoon, came in, put my gear in the car, thought I'd better check my phone, and I had a look, and here's this message from the Prime Minister's office that I was to meet with Kevin Rudd in Broken Hill the next morning at 11 a.m. Well, I looked at it, I didn't know what to do, and I thought that it was stupid. So the only one I could think of was to ring the chairman. So I rang the chairman, I said, look, I've got this instruction that I'm to be in Broken Hill. The Prime Minister wants to meet with primary health as well as the local health district. And I said, but I can't afford it, I can't justify a charter craft to get out there and bang. And he said, well, the Prime Minister said to go and they're paying for it, so go. So Nancy turns up, I ring a book of craft, turn up at the airport, and the tiniest plane in the world, and a pilot that I knew of but had never flown with, and I wasn't very keen, and he went to Broken Hill. It wasn't a very long session, but I still remember, and a lot of people talk about Kevin Rudd and his whiteboard, but he did get the whiteboard up, and I still think he was on the right track to a great degree. He wanted a regional, and this is before all the networks were established, he wanted the funding for hospitals, primary health and aged care facilities to be under the one umbrella of a regional area networks. That was what the whiteboard was used for. So I thought he was pretty good at that stage, but it was a long way home in that little plane. But we made it. But a bit of an unusual story for somebody to be telling about flying to Broken Hill just for about an hour meeting and back again. But it was worth it.
You did what you were told to do, Nancy. There you go.
But I was always regarded as being a bit extravagant but not wasteful, and I thought that plane was a bit wasteful.
Yes, I remember not over catering because you weren't wasteful. I always had to, don't over cater. Nancy was CEO, don't over cater. Thank you, Nancy. Our workforce challenges, as we've already heard, they've been long-standing. So let's hear about this now.
We had such a shortage of GPs, and at that time 49% of graduates were going into GP practice, and I said that's not enough to service a city. 49%. We need at least I remember saying we need at least 75%. So we're almost back where we began in those early years, Nancy. You and I working so hard on that shortage of GPs. We were relying on OTDs.
Practice, right?
Yeah, OTDs were, and we were robbing other countries of their health practitioners, and we had 49%.
Yes, we had lockout picnics was one particular one that we did, and I do have some photos there of a couple of days there, but trying to get them to match up with farmers' daughters or farmers' sons.
Farmer wants a wife, GP wants a husband or GP wants a wife.
Yeah, but it was, and yes, I went from place to place, and some of the overseas trained doctors that are in town now, I entertained personally to get them to come or to stay too. So it was really a lot of work, but it was a lot of personal work you had to put into it, and encourage them to be accepted into the communities and so forth. But yes, and we did improve the ratio.
Oh, we
very
did
much, and
absolutely,
and we were very proud of it.
Yeah,
and we used to be
great model, wasn't it? A great model.
Now, look, I just think it's great to have a primary care organisation. It's great to have an organisation that can get general practice talking to allied health, talking to the health system, and supporting general practice. People come into general practice in the various ways that it does. So all in all, I still think it's a great thing to have, and we'd be devastated if the government decided to stop providing support to primary health networks.
But I think what we're very good at is we're very good at taking those government programs and policies and actually unpacking them in general practice and giving them that opportunity to understand what it actually means and what you need to do in order to take up this initiative. It can be quite daunting, all that government speak and all of those things that sort of come from above, I guess. So we have that ability to be able to actually know exactly what the capacity is in the practice to actually take on some of these initiatives. I think that's the benefit of the staff that work in Murrumbidgee, is having that knowledge about how to do that with individual organisations or stakeholders that we work with.
Jodie, you have a unique role where you're both a GP, board director, chair. How is MPHN supporting those workforce challenges today?
I mean, I think there's a number of ways that they do it, and I like the fact that I don't get to talk about funny travel stories or anything. You give me the hard questions tonight. But I think, you know, as Peter was reflecting on, it's, you know, GPs are very varied in the way that they work, in their approach, and getting them all on the same page is never going to be the case, because there's a lot of individuality about how general practitioners work, and I think rather than being a negative, that's often a strength, because we can be what is necessary for the communities in which we work. But it can be a challenge to get people on board. I think the things that the PHN do really well, as mentioned in the engagement team, they really do get deep into the practices, and even those people that may be naysayers about PHNs and say, oh, well, we could do this on our own, why are they paying them, why is the government paying them all that money? They probably don't know that back in their practice manager's office, there's someone from the PHN sitting there working with them, supporting them to obtain a grant, to work on a program that supports their patients and their community. So they do that work really well, and I think that was really highlighted for me the most when we were working on our last strategic plan. And it's not something that is a popular, exciting Friday night thing to talk about, a strategic plan, but it's really important so that we're on the right track for our communities. And the board made a very conscious decision to really involve all of our stakeholders in our community in developing the most recent plan, and did a lot of consultation with that, and that was facilitated by our executive. And when we met with groups of people on the phone and via Zoom and things, it was really interesting how so many people wanted to meet, talk and have input. And the feedback, you sort of brace yourself for people sort of being negative or things, particularly GPs can be pretty negative at times just because lots going on. And they were all actually really supportive and saying, look, we really appreciate having people in our corner who listen, who take the time to support us, and we know that there's someone on the end of the phone who can give us a hand with even some of these complex problems, you know, in sorting out our work. So, you know, we're not magical. The PHN doesn't have a magic button to press and make workforce appear from nowhere. No one does, even those workforce agencies that do workforce as their full-time job, and we don't, and we're not funded for it anywhere near those agencies. But the ability to really know the practices we work and support them, maybe not to increase workforce in the numbers that they've got, but to support them to be able to do the job that they need to do with their patients and community, and free them up from some of those other things and support them in other ways with funding has been really important. And it's also important to know the innovative programs that are being run, looking at things now like shared medical appointments to make our workforce be able to work to work smarter and not harder with our populations, and to work with communities on community-led programs in places like Deniliquin and Tumut, where it's been really important that the communities have had a say in saying, well, we don't have all the people that we need, how are we going to make that work for our town? When I first moved to Wagga, one of the things, I came here for 2 years, about 17 years ago. And even though there wasn't any farmer wants a husband or wants a wife or whatever, I would still stayed, thanks. But you know, the things that might not seem large but are really supporting our workforce to be comfortable and work here, things like CPD events where you get to the end of a workday, sit and talk with some colleagues. Now they're more fashionably called communities of practice, but they have some similar roles. And I was talking to someone earlier this evening about how hard it is to keep people engaged and make them feel welcomed in communities and to stay for longer periods. And there's some great initiatives that have been supported and done up in looking at young professionals networks and things. So all of those things add and blend into that tapestry of things that helps people stay connected to our region. And over time, they bear fruits. Maybe not as many as we'd like, not as abundantly, but they do work.
Thanks, Jodie. We're moving on to collaboration and partnerships, and we know some of the strengths often cited by our organisation is our ability to harness and foster relationships and partnerships through collaboration. Certainly in my role, I'm particularly proud of the collaboration work we've achieved in suicide prevention. This next video touches on some of these over the years.
But it is teamwork, isn't it?
But it's also, if you say when you ask us to think of something, you don't think of those sort of things that did happen, but they were really
They were very
game-changing.
Absolutely.
Game-changing.
Yeah.
We game-changed in Wagga a lot of things that happened nationally.
Definitely.
It was mainly because we were doing things differently and ahead of time. And
are we doing that now?
So the Sensory Garden started off with a grant back in 2012. We received some funding to establish a garden for people with dementia. And we worked closely with, and at that time we were Medicare Local, and we worked closely with the Men's Shed and the Wagga City Council and the local health district to get the grant off the ground and get the garden built.
MPHN are instrumental in us gaining grants. There's a whole lot of things that we've been able to do that we could not possibly have done unless we had Medicare Local behind it.
We had a partnership with TAFE at one period of time where TAFE were running some education or TAFE certificate for older people through the garden, so that was a great partnership. And then there was another event where we had with the LHD having a Dementia Awareness Day and having an open garden, running some education sessions for people with dementia. Yeah, I think as a PHN and previously as a Medicare Local, I think being able to partner with people has been really important. And taking the Sensory Garden as an example, we couldn't have done it without partnering with the Men's Shed. The Wagga Council were critical partners in getting it off the ground. And I think that's in a lot of the work that we do. Having those partnerships is really important.
What we've been able to do throughout the region in healthcare and certainly primary health has been not a matter of any one person doing great things. It's a matter of all of us cooperating as a team, working together, respecting each other, and working for the benefit of the region, not for the benefit of ourselves. So I think that's a lot of our success.
Much more collaboration.
Absolutely. It's a really successful region for that. I do think the real success story of our region through the division, then the Medicare Local, and then the PHN has been the collaboration and the attitude toward collaboration that has delivered to so many people.
We're not distracted by delivering the services, so we can really take that time to develop those relationships with stakeholders, take a bit of a load off them when it comes to things like coordinating responses when we're talking in suicide prevention, when it's really around pulling together stakeholders to have a look at what do we need across the region. We've got those connections to that state and national level, as well as our local service providers and other stakeholders.
Oh, it's just wonderful to see Nancy and Kay here together, and I think what you've spoken about there and what you've demonstrated over the years really speaks to that importance of collaboration and partnership, so thank you. Jody, we heard Nancy and Kay talk about how the organisation has been a game changer over the years. Late last year, the collaborative agreement was signed between the PHN and the LHD. And can you just tell us why partnerships and collaboration are so critical to the work that we do?
I think the partnerships and collaboration at its very essence are important, not because they're written on paper for any of us on any of the boards, either of the boards or either of the organisations, but the people in our community, actually don't care where they get their healthcare from. What they care about is that they get healthcare. So when we work together and do our very best, and it's never as good as we'd like it to be, but we do our best to make that experience better for them and less stressful, and we work together to try and work out how we can provide services without duplicating them, and there are less hoops to go through. Then that's what collaboration at its heart is for. That's our purpose. And how we do that needs lots of things in the background that are less exciting and more process and more governance but they're important too, to make sure that those things are not just about people in particular roles, and that person A gets along with person B and things work, because person A will retire or resign or move, but the systems are in place. So that things move seamlessly and patients get the care that they need. That's what collaboration's for.
Thank you. It's a really good explainer. Narelle, luckily none of you got blown away in the wind on that day at the Sensory Garden.
I don't know why Trevor and I and Rhonda got videoed in the garden, but anyway, it was a nice location.
Lovely.
So
it was a great idea.
Yeah, at the time it was.
Very windy. So Narelle, we heard about the Sensory Garden and all the partners and collaboration that was involved to establish this. And we also understand that staff went above and beyond for the project too. What can you tell us about this?
I'll be very quick because I know we want to keep moving on and get through all of our videos, but the Sensory Garden was one of those out-of-the-box sort of projects that Nancy got off the ground as well. And, we've got Trevor and Rhonda here tonight who are volunteers at the garden, but certainly remember being at the garden when in its earliest days with the kids, shoveling dirt, and our project officer, I think, went out and bought herself a nice pair of gumboots so that she could be down there and working with the architects and gardeners to get that garden established. So a great project to be involved in.
Thank you. COVID time. So we heard in the previous video a little bit about COVID times. Let's hear some more about this and how the organisation managed these unprecedented times.
There's this huge question mark at the start of the pandemic, which is, what is this going to look like? Where is this going to go? We were seeing lots of images from overseas. I think people individually had such a high level of uncertainty, myself included. You're dealing with things on a personal level, going, hang on, I've got my family. At the time I had my mum who had cancer, and, trying to think, well, how do we look after her? How do we look after our staff in all of this? And not knowing how that was going to unfold, was just one of those things. It kind of really had to take it day by day. I recall very early on when COVID was identified, and at the time we were working on our COVID response plan. So that was in the event that, things really escalate, what do we do? And so we'd started to think about things like remote working, which at the time, it's kind of odd to think it was not that far ago, but at the time we didn't have the infrastructure to support the organisation working remotely. We had to pivot so incredibly quickly just to get that infrastructure up and running.
And as I say, in addition to that, as you said, we're managing staff and teams and so on, but also had a role in supporting general practice in that response to COVID, and information out to the community, and an integration role there with the local health district.
It's interesting that we actually had a discussion as a board. We had a board development session about a month before COVID became really evident, and at that time we talked briefly as a board about black swan events. That is, things like that you couldn't predict that you were really going to hit you, and how we prepare for those. And so we actually had a bit of a discussion about that, and then ironically, a month or so later, COVID hit with full force.
During the pandemic, we had to work in non-prescriptive formats and in a ways that we haven't worked before.
Stuff, yeah.
We had lots of virtual meetings. the organization had to adapt to working without people working in the office. An organization had to delve into areas that they wouldn't otherwise had to. For example, so many meetings between aged care stakeholders. There were so many meetings about vaccine distribution stuff. PHN all of a sudden become a storage hub for masks and all those stuff. Look, that wasn't anywhere written in PHN's mandate or work to do.
Jody, we heard you mention the board meeting to prepare for COVID. What do you recall about that board meeting, and how do you think MPHN performed during this period?
It sort of goes into a bit of a blur afterwards. It's not that long ago, but it feels like it was a long time ago. And as I said, we'd had this board development day, and we had this academic discussion about black swan events and were we prepared. And the board member who shall remain nameless, we now blame him for COVID. But I think we had to really quickly put those plans into place and try and support the organisation and do all sorts of things, thinking about, as Alar mentioned, about supporting working from home arrangements and, supporting the CEO and making decisions around that. I think overall, the organisation did a fantastic job, to be honest, about COVID. They showed how flexible they could be, how adaptive and how resilient that they could be. And despite working from home, they kept morale up in the organisation. They're a front-facing health organisation. They had to put a good face on it and be positive about how we were going to deal with it. And I think, they did it really well.
Thanks, Jody. I think most people will agree COVID also fostered the need to be innovative in how we worked and supported our stakeholders. For me, my role in supporting community innovations through various natural disasters has been really heartwarming. It's inspiring to see community members band together to support each other in these times. Let's take a look at our next video on this very topic.
One initiative that comes to mind is when we launched the Tell It Well program, and I think even to this day I still do it, but you get these insights through Tell It Well about someone's journey and their experiences. And one of the very first, our very first storyteller was Dr. Khalid Bardawal, who's in Lake Jellicoe, and he shared with us his experiences out in Lake during the drought, and this was at the time when we were still in drought. And our intent with those stories was to capture someone's experience and insights, and then to be able to share that with others with the aim of, really providing a bit of hope and also letting people know that they weren't alone in their journey. And it really was trying to harness that power of storytelling. I think particularly in regional and rural communities, ensuring that we have that voice from our own regional and rural communities that people can relate to. Again, it just highlights that through the work that we do, we really can have an impact.
You've got to be prepared to, have the courage to take those risks. And sometimes we stay in this bubble, and that's what I think. Yeah. This region doesn't stay in a bubble. No.
One of them is Henty Fields for me.
Yes.
I enjoyed thoroughly the Henty Fields. Going there and helping the team set up, and then speaking to all those people in there and having a chance to listen to the people and see what's happening in rural and regional area is something which is a great experience for me.
One of the things that I'm incredibly proud of is the connection that we've been able to build with our communities. And we've been able to do that in several ways through the establishment of Conversations on the Couch in around 2018, and that was our approach to going and engaging with communities in a way that would help us understand what those challenges and needs were in the communities. In addition to that, being able to work with communities through so many challenges. We've had bushfires, we've had drought, we've had floods, we've had COVID, and we've been able to connect with communities, really communities at a grassroots level, to roll out programs and initiatives that support the wellbeing of those communities.
Okay, we're just going to hit a little fast forward and we're nearly there. So around staff culture, as an organisation, we often hear that we're a great place to work. More recently, during our recruitment, it isn't uncommon to hear from someone who's being interviewed for a role that they've heard we have a great culture and they actively sought a role with MPHN. So let's just hear from some of our staff about our workplace culture.
I feel that our culture has remained the same. You know, it's such a welcoming place to be, and you know, I certainly feel at home and you know, really valued when I'm in the organisation, and I have had that feeling since I started back in 2013. You know, and I think that's something that we should all be really proud of.
For me, it's more of, along with the can-do attitude, is also that everyone helps, and everyone, like, if they don't know something, they'll always be like, I don't know, but I can direct you to somebody who might know, which ends up being so much more helpful, because you don't have to go around searching and finding out, and everyone knows what everyone's doing and has an idea of this entire community, and it's always everyone helping me out and everyone helping me to be my best. And I think that is so important, like, to push you up to succeed.
The work-life balance in this organisation is, I think it's explanatory, really. Yeah. I think it's a great organisation to work for in terms of the support that they give you to have a good work-life balance.
MPHN really has that culture feeling. When I first come into the organisation, I don't know whether it was my ancestors or the Angels, but I felt safe and welcome straight away when I walked into the doors here at MPHN.
I think I have always enjoyed the atmosphere when you come into the office. The staff, there's a good culture in the office, I found, and when I come into the office for meetings and enjoy having a conversation or a bit of a quiet chat to somebody, or you know, people in the office are often open to a chat or a joke or something amusing as you go along.
I think it's purpose. So the opportunity to make a difference to the systems, to the health service providers, the clinicians that we support, but also to those that live within our community and actually know that we're making a difference to the lives of people.
So that's the end of the formal panel discussion. I hope you all found it interesting, entertaining, and it brought back some memories for you. Thank you very much to the wonderful panel members for sharing some of your stories and insights, and being great leaders for the organisation across the years. We've really appreciated you spending the time with us this evening. During the course of our video interviews, we heard many stories about life working in our organisation. So we'll just have one listen to one last video. Thank you.
After years and years of managing the workforce and CPD program, even to this day, I can still remember dietary requirements for a large number of GPs, practice managers, and even their families from when we did chronic care weekends.
So when I first began at the PHN, based in Griffith, we had hired space in the top floor of the St Vincent's Community Private Hospital, which had just opened 3 months earlier. I was the solo occupant of the top floor, the entire top floor of the hospital. And I would every day walk in and there'd be not a living soul on this top floor. I had to have a radio going just so I didn't get freaked out by the silence. And probably the funniest thing was there's actually, because it's an education suite, there's a mannequin that's upstairs, and his name's Kelly as well. So I used to go every morning, walk past and say, "Good morning, Kelly." And I always thought to myself, if he answers, I'm running.
Look, we did have lots of fun as a board, right through over those, as you said, 25 years. Particularly, a lot of them were with Nancy Pearcey.
One time we were at one of the must have been a Medicare local conference, and the CEO, Nancy Pearcey, went off to the casino at night time. And I should have gone with her, because when I saw her at breakfast the next morning, I said, "How did you go, Nancy?" And she just showed me all these $100 bills that she won at the casino.
And I had met Tony Abbott at Narrandera, and he was riding through on his
Polly pedal.
And I'd said to him then, I said, you know, we're trying to get money for the Wagga GP after our service, and that's why I came over. I think he asked why was I in Narrandera, and I'd gone all the way over there to make sure I met him. And he said, "Oh, here, has anyone got a pen?" And he grabbed it and said, "Here's my fax number. You fax me the submission." So I faxed the submission, and coming right back out round to where I started was we were up in this room at Wagga
Harvey
Base
House,
Hospital.
it was?
Yes,
Yep.
Harvey House. And he's answering all the doctors, and all the specialists are asking questions, and I was right at the back. And anyhow, he did say to, I think it was Gerard Carroll, "Look, I'll give you my fax number and you can send it to me direct." So with that, I stepped forward and said, "Excuse me, Mr. Minister, I sent you a fax, but I never heard a reply." And he said, "Kay, have you got a media release there?" Kay had a media release of how many $1,000 we were going to get. So it was hitting the paper the next day.
Thank you, Anita, and thank you to all of our panel members. And thank you also to Christy, who's sitting over there, who put all of those videos together. Thanks. So what a trip down memory lane that's been, and those stories really remind me of what a privilege and an honour it is to work and lead such an inspiring organisation. The impact we have and our legacy of achievements demonstrates just how well placed we are to continue moving towards our vision of well people and resilient communities across the Murrumbidgee. We just have one last formality, so no 30-year celebration would be complete without a cake. So I'll ask Nancy, Peter and Jody to stay close by and join me shortly in helping to cut the cake. And as part of cutting the cake, we'd also like to get a group photo, which I believe is going to have everybody down here, and the photographer's going to be up here. Yep. Before I officially sign off, I would like to sincerely thank you all for making time to attend tonight. Please travel home safely, but before you leave, please continue enjoying the evening. I do believe there's some more food that will come out. Tea, coffee and cake will be also served shortly. And if you haven't already, please share a video message, write in our message book and have some photos taken with your colleagues. Thank you again for attending and good night.